The memorandum? This one?
Oh, I've got one here.
No, I don't, let me see. Okay.
Is this it?
Oh, okay, yeah, this is it.
Is this one? Right here? Okay, okay. Thank you.
I now call the Housing and Community Development Committee meeting to order. First, we'll do roll call. Looking to my left, Councilwoman West. Deputy Mayor West is sitting in for Mayor Roots, and Councilwoman Gibson Williams is present, as well as myself. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for the July 21st, 2025 meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is there any public comment on agenda items? Hearing or seeing none, presentation by Mr. Paul Fritz.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Paul Fritz. I'm the Planning and Zoning Director for the City of Chester. I appreciate you guys wanting to meet with me today. What I'd like to do is talk about a zoning amendment similar to the process that we've done before for zoning amendments, most recently the smoke shop amendment. I'm finding it's very helpful to go through this committee, introduce the legislation, talk about what I've learned from the Planning Commission, other comments, and it kind of preps us for City Council adoption of the zoning amendment. So I really appreciate you allowing me to participate in this, and I do think it's a good process. And I'll talk about a little bit more about the process at the end of this presentation. My presentation should be brief. I only have 8 slides. But what this specific zoning amendment addresses is a term in the zoning ordinance that relates to construction and tradesperson headquarters, which is a little bit vague, but what we're seeing recently is a trend towards these types of uses in our mixed-use districts. And from a planning perspective, I have a pretty major concern about this, and it just isn't me, it's the Planning Commission and other constituents. When we see a submittal for these construction headquarters or / tradesperson headquarters, they're mostly landscaping businesses. And what those businesses typically involve are pole barns, which you see an image right here on the screen here. There's a million different versions of what a pole barn is, but this one was an actual submittal in a C2 district, and it asked for storage in the building and then offices on a second floor. But again, it's a pole barn. It's utilitarian-looking structure. It's not really relatable to the sidewalk and pedestrian friendliness, et cetera. And then also, it also involves outdoor storage usually. So a landscaping business, you see mulch, stone storage, skid steer storage, equipment storage. So that's what I want to bring to your attention and how we want to address these types of businesses. So again, where are these uses currently allowed? Well, they're allowed in our mixed-use districts, as I said. So that's our C1R, the neighborhood commercial residential, the C2R, the general commercial residential, the CBD, so these are allowed in the CBD, and they're allowed in the waterfront district, in addition to already being allowed in our industrial districts. And just a reminder that the mixed-use districts, those 4 that you see above the slide there, or on the slide, are, it's 4 mixed-use, residential and retail, professional offices, and then it's a mixing of those. So you could have commercial on first floor and residential on second floor. That's the ideal mixed use because that provides a vitality 24 hours a day on a street, which is important in our C1, C2, and even our waterfront district. And again, the goal of the mixed-use districts are making it walkable, vibrant, and economically diverse. So I just brought a map of our zoning districts just to remind you. Let me see if I can get this highlighted here. where our C1 and C2 are, and C2 are, obviously you know where our CBD is right here, so you can see that at my cursor. And then the C1R and the C2Rs are the light pink and the dark pink. So they're scattered throughout the city. And there's reasons for that. That's because those are really almost like the centers of our neighborhoods, our various neighborhoods. It's where we want the mixed use to occur. And then there are C2Rs near our LICs too, especially along the West 2nd Street or 291 corridor. So I mentioned some of the concerns that we have with these pole barn constructions are, the outdoor storage. It creates visual clutter. In some instances, you'll see fencing, which is good because it'll buffer the views of that storage and the building. But the fencing right along the sidewalk is not like a pedestrian-friendly scenario that we want, I think, in our mixed-use districts. So that's why it reduces pedestrian activity and street-level engagement. Potentially diminishes investment in these mixed-use districts because, again, the lack of vitality and people walking around these areas. And then there is really a conflict with our mixed-use districts on a large-scale planning perspective because they aren't providing that mixed-use scenario. So how are we proposing to address this? So one thing, remarkably, we don't have in our zoning ordinance today a definition of tradesman headquarters or construction headquarters. So I think the first thing we would do, and it's part of this proposed amendment, is define what that is. And I've got the definition here. It's in that memo that I provided to you as well. It's basically a facility serving construction-related businesses or skilled tradespersons. And it can include office space for administrative functions, storage of tools, equipment, materials, and then it may also include parking for company vehicles. It may also involve fabrication or assembly of components relating to the trade, but does not include large-scale manufacturing or retail sales to the public. So that's the definition that we're proposing for the specific use. What we're also proposing to do is pull this use out of our C1R, our C2R, and our waterfront districts and limit them to our industrial districts, the LIC, the MIC, and the HIC. Because these districts are better suited for this type of use. So you can imagine, you take that pole barn image, or the one that I showed the image on West 3rd Street, that to me seems more fitting with our industrial zones. Because you can have the storage, you can have the building, which again looks utilitarian and industrial, and then you can have the office use there as well. And just a reminder where these industrial districts are, you can see these green arrows. They aren't all showing all of them, but they're the light purple, the dark purple, and the medium purple. And they're less scattered. You can notice that they're not really on the north half of the city. Of course, we have one area, it's basically where the car dealership is, off 95. And then mostly these districts are along the 291 corridor, where, again, has really been our perspective and our planning goals is to allow that type of mixed-use industrial use on the 291 corridor and in the MIC and HIC districts. Again, everything we do, especially for our zoning amendments, we need to make sure it supports the comprehensive plan. So my belief is by doing this zoning amendment, we're preserving the character of those C1R, C2R, and waterfront districts. We're encouraging cohesive and attractive development patterns just because of what we just talked about, these buildings not necessarily having the vitality that they should in those districts. And then we are, I believe, by allowing them in our industrial districts, promoting economic growth and neighborhood vitality. And then lastly, before I'll leave it open for questions and comments, I just want to go over the process. So the Planning Commission has seen a draft of this. The next step of that process was to present in front of you. We've also shared a draft of this zoning amendment with the Delaware County Planning Department, which is part of the 247 process. It's a requirement by the state. We'll be getting comments back from them by September 18th. That's their next meeting. And then I'll ask the planning commission to make a recommend for approval if they're fine with the language. And then we'll have a public hearing, and then it'll be presented in front of council for adoption. So how long does that take? It could take another month before we get in front of you, in front of city council for adoption. And I just want to make sure that's clear. Now, having said that, I'm certain you have some questions, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions at this time.
I have a question.
Sure.
What does it mean, though, for the current businesses that are scattered throughout the city?
Like
will
the
they-
existing tradesperson headquarters?
Yes.
Is that what you mean? They're grandfathered in, so we can't say, oh, hey, we just changed the law, you got to leave. They are what they are, they're there. Now, what that also leads to is another question is if there's a proposal in front of us right now for this type of use, which there is one in sketch plan, which is informal review, the thought is that would be allowed to go through the review process and it would be grandfathered in. That's why we're super focused on trying to get this addressed because we do think it's almost like an emergency situation. It's a trend. We're seeing more and more of it. CETA is seeing proposals of this for city land. And there's the one that's currently on the books is at the corner of Lamoken. It's the northwest corner of Lamoken and West 3rd. Now, if you think of what that is, looks like today, it's mostly buildings with first floor commercial, although maybe some of them are vacant, obviously. It's second floor living areas. So if you imagine just a pole barn plopped on that corner, the corner being even more detrimental, in my belief, of having a pole barn and trucks and trailers putting out there. It just doesn't fit. It really just doesn't fit. So that's my concern, is just trying to address this single thing. We have a lot of zoning issues. We're working through them. And as I told Councilman Green, like, this one is a priority that we want to get through as soon as possible. But that's a good question about the grandfathering.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from the public?
Yeah, Joy.
Joy Taylor, City Controller. Thank you, Mr. Fritz, for the presentation. I just had a quick question in regards to, I know that we specified the names of the structures, but have we ensured that we've covered any other structure that goes by a different name that may still have that appearance? Because we know people like to slip things in that may not necessarily be classified as that, but
Yeah.
in its exterior architecture, that's exactly what it is. So I just wanted to make sure that we covered as many bases as we possibly could. And also if structures such as like the tiny home structures,
Yeah.
if they fall into that same type, because they come larger
Yeah.
than what
Yeah.
than what we've seen in past. A lot of improvement and development is happening in that space. So I just wanted to know if we've had an opportunity to make sure that we're including as many of those as we possibly can while we're pushing for the urgency to get this ordinance updated.
Let me tackle that second one about the tiny homes. That's a separate use from anything we're talking about here today because it involves a dwelling or a residence. So we're not talking about anything here about residential. Will that be addressed in future amendments? Hopefully, because tiny homes is a mixed bag. They could be containers, shipping containers turned into housing, which, I'm all for innovation and everything, but we need to have some idea of if we want that inner city, how will we regulate it? Right now, it's kind of questionable on how we regulate it. That's a whole nother issue that I hope to address. Now, I think the other question you had was, is it just tradesman headquarters or construction headquarters that are going to give us these pole barns? It's a really good question. I feel confident that in dealing with the construction headquarters, we will get most of the pole barn issues addressed. Now, could someone theoretically come in with a straight up office let's just say a real estate office, right? And come in and install a pole barn in our C1R, possibly. But the thing is, ideally with a real estate office, they're not going to have mulching storage. They're not going to park skid steers. They're not going to have the extraneous stuff. They're not going to want to put up security fencing around a real estate office. So essentially, it's these type of uses specific to construction and tradesperson headquarters that we're really concerned about, because they want the high security, the fencing, the security lighting, the extra parking and storage on their site. But that's a good question, because it's hard to think of everything when you make these zoning amendments. It truly is. But I feel like in addressing the way we've got it now, we will put a curb to where those should be located in the city, if that makes sense. So that's a really good question.
Any more questions, comments?
If I might, I think another question someone legitimately could ask is, so right now we're saying no in the C1R, C2R waterfront. There could be more flexibility if we did it by special exception or conditional use. Special exception provides flexibility because if this use came across our board with the Planning Commission, we'd have to go in front of the zoning hearing board, and there'd be a hearing about it to see if it fits within the city. What I'm saying today is if it's a pole barn 9 out of 10 times, it's probably just not going to fit in that C1, C2R area. The next more restrictive one would be a conditional use, which would make the applicant come in and present in front of city council. City council would have to review it and make a decision if they would allow it. Provides a little bit flexibility, but if you also look at it like, if we say no to these, someone still could make an application and ask for a variance on the use. That would require a zoning hearing board. My feeling is, let's say no, let's say, have the city say no to these because we don't want these pole barn type uses on West 3rd Street and other places in the city, and make them ask for that variance and fight for it, and prove that it's a hardship, etc. Right now we don't have that. These are allowed by right. So just one other example that we saw this, and John's familiar with this, is on city-owned land on the 700 block at Green Street. It's the northeast side next to Pulaski Park. We had a proposal come in for this type of building, literally the one that you saw on the first slide, having that right next to Pulaski Park because it's a C1R. I recommended that it didn't get approved or allowed to be built because, one, it was right near a park. Near a park, we want people and people living next to it having eyes on it. And it just did not seem like an appropriate use or building proposal.
And it's residential.
And it's residential. So that's why there's so much conflicts with having this use in the C1 and C2R and the W1, obviously. It just doesn't seem like a good fit. It seems to make sense to go through with this process.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Candace Newsom, City Clerk, up there it said public hearing. Who will be having the public hearing?
The Planning and Zoning Department would have a public hearing. As soon as we have the review from the Planning Department, the recommendation from the Planning Commission, we just would open it up to public and have a public hearing, which I did have for the smoke shop, if you remember, Candace, a couple months ago. So, and we'd advertise and everything for that.
And if we allow this to go up, like the residential area of Providence and 25th Street, East 25th Street, there's a big space there, land.
Yeah,
There's no pole barn there,
yeah,
but they're storing those trees there.
yeah.
It could end up like something like that if we allow these.
Yeah, and
mean, maybe
you're
not
testing my
that
memory of what
big,
that
but-
zone, because that's actually a prohibited use in that zone, because that is R1, I believe.
Right, it is R1.
Yeah, so that, it's already taken care of. That pole barn wouldn't be allowed to be there anyhow, besides the logs not being allowed to be there.
Right, but it could potentially, the pole barn, like with storage on the outside, looking something like that.
Just not in that area specifically, but in the C1, C2R, like, Let me see if I can find an example. The best example I can come up with is West Third Street. So in my mind, West Third Street should be revitalized at the minimum. And the one way to do that is to get more vitality down there with people. We need dwelling units. We need mixed commercial. We don't need security fencing, outdoor stores. It just
I
doesn't
agree.
feel right. It feels okay on the 291 corridor, but not necessarily on West Third Street. It's not really what I think the city deserves personally. So that's the best example I can give you because it's there already. Yeah.
Hearing or seeing no more comments, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is good. I can see the city looking good, everything in place like a
It's
puzzle.
coming. It's coming
Yeah.
along, right?
Stay there. Oh, we live. I guess.
Yeah, you cut it off.
Did you second that?
Yes.
Second adjourn?
I'd like a copy of this.
Oh, yeah.
Don't turn it off yet.